everybody. And thank you once again for the kind support this church has been offering our education project in Guatemala for many years now. Our project is up and running and doing very well, and I'll have some more to say about that in a few minutes. A lot of people have been asking me about immigration because, as you know, there has been a large movement of people from Central America and Mexico that are coming to the Texas border and trying to get into the United States. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit about the root causes of the immigration. Why are so many people coming north? And I'll look at the case of Guatemala in particular, but the case of Honduras is also very relevant. The basic reason for immigration is poverty. And the basic reason for poverty, well, let me say that Guatemala is a country with a lot of wealth, a lot of natural wealth, a lot of fertile land. They have minerals such as silver, gold, and nickel. They have petroleum. There's lots of cattle that are being grazed. They have crops like sugar and cotton and coffee. So it's not a poor country. It's not a dry, barren place where food can't be grown. So what we have, the basic problem in Guatemala and in Honduras and in Nicaragua and in so many countries is that the wealth of these nations for well over 100 years doesn't serve the people of that country. The wealth of those nations is generally, if you look at the top of the pyramid, where that money goes, it's to the capitalists in the United States and in other developed countries. So we have situations like today, a good example of that today. All over Guatemala, there are mining companies, both from Canada and from the U.S., that want to extract the gold, the silver, the nickel, take that wealth out of the country, which is Guatemalans' mineral wealth, pay a small honorarium to the government, and then take the vast majority of that money up to Canada or to the United States. So this is a really clear example, I think, of how the nation's resources are not used. That money could be used for schools, for health care. Guatemala has the lowest per capita spending on education of any country in the Americas, has the highest infant malnutrition rate, has a lot of hunger in the country, and has very poor health care system. So we have the dichotomy of a wealthy country, but none of that money flowing back to the people that live there. So these mining companies that are from capitalist interests, in this case from North America, the people in these areas have voted over and over again in referendums that are supported by international treaty that indigenous peoples have the right to have an informed referendum about whether or not they want outside operations to come into their community. And they have voted over and over again rejecting the entrance of mining companies. Yet the government won't respect that. There's a small 2% of the Guatemalans that are very wealthy, have enormous amounts of land and wealth, and they're the immediate, and they're connected to the capitalists in the north, while most of the people live in poverty. A really good example of this sort of model that I'm discussing, if we go back to the 1950s, Guatemala had a progressive government, a democratic government that was trying to do land reform in Guatemala so that people would have better access to the land. In Guatemala, 2% of the population owns 70% of the land. So you have two people that occupy most of the good land, and you have the other 98% living on the rest. Well, in the 1950s, Guatemala was working to change that, but that upset the United Fruit Company, headquartered out of Boston. They owned 60% of Guatemala's land, 60% in the hands of one Boston fruit company. They were using that mostly to raise bananas, which profitable itself. So most of that land was idle and unused. So the Guatemalan government at that time said, we're going to compensate United Fruit. We're going to start to expropriate part of their idle land. We're going to pay them the value of their land as they declared it on their tax return. And they, of course, had to declare it to be worth very little. So here you have a situation, the Guatemala government trying to reorient the economy for the welfare of the country, and that they were overthrown in a U.S.-sponsored military coup. So these are big things that are happening that are coming directly from the north. This isn't just Guatemala, the same thing in Honduras. There was there was a military overthrow in 2009, just 10 years ago, moving a progressive president out of Honduras and bringing in a really corrupt government. This happened in Nicaragua when I was there in the 1980s and the early 90s. The same model is seen over and over and over. And this model is responsible for poverty, huge discrepancies between poor and the wealthy, and poverty for most people all throughout the Americas, not just in Guatemala. And that's the underlying root cause of why we have immigration. We have a village of about 1,200 people. 10% of the village has migrated to the United States. Not because of a war, but simply because of economics. They can earn so much more money. A person can earn in 1 hour working as a landscaper, or maybe an hour and a half working as a landscaper in Canada or the US, or a babysitter, or picking fruits and vegetables, working on construction. They can earn in 1 hour what they would earn an entire day in Guatemala. So there's this obvious economic reason for people to come north. We see a lot of that right out of our village. Another factor in the migration we're seeing more and more people from Guatemala are climate refugees. There is a dry part of Guatemala which has always been somewhat hard to grow crops, but with human-caused climate change, we're now seeing longer dry seasons. We're seeing this in our village, but particularly in the dry corridor. So we're having more and more people are migrating to the United States as climate refugees because they're hungry. I think as we eat breakfast in the morning, we all appreciate how good that food feels. And if you can imagine, you're only eating one meal a day, or in the worst cases, one meal every 2 days. You're going to have people that are going to start migrating just for that, out of hunger. Now, tying this into our education project, we've had a wonderfully successful project, thanks to the support of this church and other churches like yours, and solidarity groups. We have a solidarity group in Kingston, Ontario that supports us. And thanks to that support, we've graduated over 550 students from our village middle school, grades 7, 8, 9. And this is in a community where the parents never went to school. So we've had 550 graduates from our middle school. 2/3 of those with scholarship support that I fundraised have gone on to high school. And the real miracle of all this is that we have, well, I'll break it down. We have 4 doctors, we have 24 additional 6-year graduates, so that makes 28 university graduates, including the 4 doctors, and we have another 27 young men and women that have not graduated but have finished all their coursework and they're working in their professions. So 28, 27, we're talking about 55 people with solid university preparation. Only one of the 55 has moved to the United States. 54 out of 55 are working in Guatemala in their profession. So we can see the power of education. What Guatemala needs is not more police and more mining companies and more wealth being taken out of the country, but they need a chance to develop as an independent country. And you can see what can happen with education. It's incredible. 4 doctors, we have engineers and architects, social workers, teachers, nurses, accountants, business administration people. And the really cool thing about scholarships is that it's a one step up out of poverty. My first student, Emiliano, graduated with a scholarship. And then he, being a professional, was able to sponsor his younger brother to go through all of university with a scholarship. And then his younger brother, Obani, sponsored his younger sister. So it's a step-by-step progression where one scholarship, but now that whole family has been permanently lifted out of poverty. And a lot of the kids all 55 the kids that I'm mentioning are almost all are former students of mine. And a lot of them are now employing people from our village and from the greater region and businesses that they've been able to offer. So that's a kind of a brief overview of what we're doing, the overall picture of economic injustice, how we're working to change that through education. Over the course of my 25 years in Guatemala, I have been able to raise $2 million US, which has been flowing little by little by little over the course of 25 years. So I look at it as a real contribution that I can make. Coming from a wealthy country where we indeed bear some responsibility for the poverty that's occurring in other countries, and I'm able to serve as a channel for people of goodwill and bring that down and do really what the Guatemalan government should be doing, providing funding for education. So I'll finish with that. Thank you for your attention and thank you for your support over many years.